one lesson is the importance of leadership, that individual leaders can make a significant difference in the outcome of events in historic time. And I think when I was younger, for good reasons, I underplayed the significance of individual leaders in shaping world history and events. And that was a fundamental mistake. We need competent leaders. We need leaders who are effective and who can make things happen. We need leaders who are virtuous, and we need leaders who can build up other leaders. And it really matters to have leaders. I know Miss Ella Baker said strong people don't need strong leaders. And I agree in some sense, but someone's always going to step into leadership, whether you like it or not. And I personally defer too often to incompetent, non-virtuous leaders who couldn't make things happen. And luckily, I'm young enough to correct that mistake. I'll never make that mistake again. A friend of mine named Charles Taylor, when we were coming up to working together with Mr. Charlie Cobb and some of the SNCC veterans in this project I alluded to earlier, the Freedom Side, he was a young protege of Derrick Johnson, the president of the Mississippi NAACP. Today, Charles Taylor is the president of the NAACP. I mentioned Karen Bass, who was a longtime community organizer. She's now the mayor of Los Angeles. Brandon Johnson, a union organizer, a teacher in Chicago, is now the mayor of Chicago. And so I just want to really encourage people to see the key role that leaders can play in shaping the course of history, not on their own. And I want to make it clear that leaders should be the most skilled people in our movement. They should be steward leaders who are respected and accountable to a base. And that leadership is not about proximity to media or to funders, or just because you have a show on television, therefore you're a leader. That's not what I'm talking about. There are skilled people of every race and gender, and there are also unskilled people of every race and gender. And so what it takes to be a leader really requires thought. But I want to just stress the importance of leaders in shaping the outcomes over historic time, and to step into that leadership if you can meet some of those criteria. The second thing is, when we organize from the emerging future backward. Don't just organize from the past looking forward. And why is this important? Because we can't predict, after the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was not seated at the Democratic National Convention in 1964, one of the things that Miss Mary King, who was a SNCC veteran who participated in that time period, said to me is that they didn't have a plan B, that if Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party did not succeed in New Jersey at the Democratic National Convention, what would we do next? What's the scenario planning? And the lack of an effective plan after that, people went in many different directions, some for the better, and sometimes maybe not for the better. And so the reason I say that, we should be scenario planning about what the future looks like 10, 20 years from now, and saying, how do we get to a future in artificial intelligence, in clean energy, in broadband and information communication technology, in biological technology that benefits our communities. And there are many examples in the current present context of federal dollars that are coming into the Black Belt South that can help us shape the future of these industries if we have the foresight. And then my last lesson learned is think globally, act locally. You cannot understand the emergence of this authoritarianism in the United States, what some people are referring to based on hard evidence and data as white Christian nationalism, which is a dismissal of constitutional democracy around a set of policies, practices, beliefs that want to impose a theocratic system of governance on the people of the United States. And there's a great Brookings report if you want to dig into how more than half of one of the political parties in the United States adheres to this nationalistic, anti-constitutional vision of the future. You can't understand that phenomena without understanding the changing relationship of the United States on the global scene. That after the defeats in Afghanistan and Iraq, after the defeat in Vietnam, after the loss of prestige that some Americans have had, or their perceptions of prestige in the global arena in relationship to countries in the global South, they are feeling that loss of prestige and living standards, which have declined in the United States in the absence of the dominance that the US once had, with these percolations of authoritarian populism. So to not think globally is not to understand the root causes of why these forces of opposition to multiracial democracy in the United States are emerging. And getting this right is life or death. A governor in Texas has decided to pardon a white man who took an AK-47 and murdered a Black Lives Matter activist. We're getting to the point in the nation where overt calls for race war and white nationalism are mainstream in one of the main political parties, and it's happening locally in communities, but as part of a global context. And so the analysis there matters. And I agree with Mr. Charlie Cobb that strategically the South of the United States is a key region to organize in and see opportunities to move forward for a democracy that's inclusive of all people, including working class white people, Latinos, Black people, Indigenous. We are building an inclusive future. That there is an emergent movement in the world of hope for the light of democracy, of an inclusive vision of participation for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, or class status, or gender. And so those South connections between the United States, places like Jackson, Mississippi, I think are going to be areas of creative strategy and organizing as we build from an emerging future that's coming toward us quicker than we think.